I'd like to call this meeting to order and then ask if you guys would rise when you pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's the Chiefs.
I saw that.
It's the Chiefs.
Oh, that was the Chiefs?
Yeah,
Oh,
I got your
you
back.
lost your ball.
All right, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out to this meeting this evening. In case you're not aware, the county commissioners have asked the townships and their trustees to adopt a resolution either for, against, or with preferred areas within the township for utility scale wind and solar projects within the township. We're here tonight to hear some feedback or concerns from residents before pursuing any resolution on our end. We have Casey Kozlowski here, Township or Asheville County Commissioner. Mr. Ducrow's on his way. We have Asheville County Township Association President Adam. I'm going to murder your name. Niwidomski. Close enough. All right. And also from Apex Energy here, Robert Gee. So I'm going to turn it over to Robert now, I guess, if he wants to kind of present. You guys have maps here. Present what their proposed plans or ideas are for not just our township, but our county and region in general. So Robert, if there's anything you'd like to say.
Okay. Yeah, so I kind of intended this to be a little bit less formal than some of the others that we've done, in large part because our objective as pertains to Sheffield County, Sheffield Township, is minimal. So your trustees circulated these maps here, which are a pretty good mirror image of the maps that we've been showing as well. This is an area of interest that we identify based on a lot of desktop analysis that we do prior to coming out to a project area to prospect. So when we come out to talk to landowners to gauge the interest in supporting a wind project, we will first kind of do a whole lot of background research and identify some of the areas that we think are appropriate, not appropriate, problematic, and things that we already know we need to step back from. So that pink area there on that map is pretty ridiculous looking, but if you look carefully at some of the features around those twists and turns, it begins to make a little bit more sense. So we started out by basically setting back from Lake Erie, we set back from Pymatooning, we set back from Roaming Shores, and we set back from the airport. Those are kind of the primary areas that we recognized a need to avoid. And then when we identify the areas that we want to take an interest in, we basically call this an area of interest. So this is not the full area that a wind project would occupy. This is the area that we go out to look at more carefully on the ground. So are we going to lease this entire area? It would take us 30 years to do that, and by then there would be something far more efficient than a modern day wind turbine that would make the whole enterprise kind of pointless anyway. So no, we are not seeking to blanket this entire area with wind turbines. We're not seeking to lease this entire area. We're looking within this area for willing landowners who might want to work with us. Okay. And so as pertains, so one of the things that we look at, one of the kind of the chief things before we get to willing landowners, we have to identify viable transmission infrastructure. So existing infrastructure that we believe has, based on our modeling, has available capacity on it. So is there a transmission line that we could viably inject 300 megawatts of wind power onto? And so the line in red that goes across the top of that area, that's the line that we're targeting. That's the line that kind of drew us to this area. And then we look and we say, okay, well, is there a viable wind resource here to support a wind project? And we decided that yes, most areas within that shaded area have a pretty good wind resource. And then we come out and try to understand, like, where are the landowners at? Are they supportive? Are they not supportive? And so when we began this process last April, we came out and we found that there were quite a number of landowners who wanted to work with us and were interested in what we were proposing, and so we started to sign some leases. So how does the process? So I guess what I'd like to talk about tonight is a little bit of how the development of a wind project unfolds and what are the various stages of it. Because it looks different at different phases. And so one of the first things that we do once we start to lease land, we want to try to get ourselves into the interconnection queue, in this case with PJM. So in order to do that, we need to demonstrate to PJM that we have leased 30 acres for every megawatt that we intend to inject. Right, so for a 300 megawatt project, basically we needed to show that we had leased 9,000 acres of land. But we need to do that by a particular deadline. So we began prospecting this project in April of last year. The queue filing deadline with PJM was April of this year. So we had to move relatively quickly. We started leasing, I think, in June. I don't think we signed anything until July or August. But we began leasing efforts with Station Wind in June of last year. So in about 9 months, we were able to lease about 9,000 acres of land. So where do we go from here? At this point, because there's been a lot of concern that, you know, the very, very large landowners will see some benefit from this, but nobody else will. And the very large landowners are who we target first, because we need to meet that acreage threshold. We need to get into the PJM queue to have them evaluate whether or not we can even do a project here. That takes about 2 years. During that time, we continue to lease land, but then we refocus ourselves on trying to find some connectivity. So, you know, we find those 1,000, 2,000 acre areas that we think are attractive, and then we go and focus on the 50 and 60 and 70 acre pieces that can help us connect one piece to another, right? So that's kind of the phase that we're beginning to move into now. So why are we in Sheffield Township? We're in Sheffield Township basically because the area that we are primarily leasing in and the area where that transmission line is, it runs through that corner of Sheffield Township. So how many turbines do I envision in Sheffield Township? Zero. We have no intention of siting turbines in Sheffield Township for a number of reasons. One of them is that there's a lot more tree cover in Sheffield Township than there is in some of the areas further south. And anytime we have to clear trees, that's both an expense and not a very popular proposition. So it makes a project more complicated and it makes it more expensive if you have to clear a lot of trees. You also run into bat regulations, bird regulations, and you have to be able to demonstrate that you are not harming valued species when you're clearing trees. So the fewer trees we can clear is the objective. There's also a lot of rivers and creeks and streams and wetlands and also more housing density in Sheffield Township than in other places. So the reason that corner of Sheffield Township is in the AOI is it lies between the transmission line and where we expect the rest of the project to be located. So that's our primary interest. And the reason that we basically took as much of that transmission line as we possibly could, because we won't know until we actually do some research where is the most appropriate place to connect the project along that transmission line. And because there we also need willing landowners to work with us, but we also have a lot more constructability constraints for where we can site a switchyard. So a wind project generally is going to include naturally wind turbines, the collection lines that connect all of the turbines together, what we call a collector substation, which is a substation where all of those collection lines come together, And then in this case, a transmission line that runs from that collector substation, which we kind of just broadly projected to be somewhere in the Richmond, general Richmond area, but we don't really know for sure there either. And then a transmission line that runs from that collector substation to a switch yard. The switch yard is located right on the transmission line. Okay, so those are kind of the basic elements to a wind project. And then an O&M facility, an operations and maintenance facility as well, which is, you know, usually a building maybe half the size of this one that has a couple of garage bays, a couple of offices, you know, and is kind of a depot for the technicians that will operate the wind farm once it's operating. So, we're in the process now of trying to engage with the SB 52 process, trying to provide some context as to how we develop a wind project, what are the things that we value, what are the things that we look for, but then also what are the steps to actually get a wind project approved by the OPSB before you can build it. And those steps are several and rigorous. And so Ohio is one of the toughest places to try to develop a wind project. Solar as well, but especially a wind project. And so that's in large part because the OPSB regulations are quite stringent and quite detailed. And so we have to do an enormous amount of study of all of the logistics, all of the science, all of the constructability, all of the design work. We have to bring all of that material together and then present it to the OPSB. And then there is a lengthy process that also involves your county commissioners. I believe it also involves township representatives at various stages of the review process. And then there is an actual application. There is a series of public hearings as well. So, you know, this is part of an SB 52 process. There will be a whole other public forum associated with the actual permitting process of a wind project if we can get to that stage. Okay? And that's one of the things that we're trying to stress is that, you know, this process is, you know, we at this point don't even have a project to present. So in terms of SB 52, we can't tell you where wind turbines are going to be. We can't tell you exactly how many there are going to be. We can tell you that given the wind turbines that are currently being sited on projects that are going into construction today, they generally range from about 4.2 megawatts, a lot of 4.5, up to 6, up to 6.2, right? So if you divide that out by 300, you get roughly somewhere, you know, a 6 megawatt turbine, obviously you're going to have 50 turbines. I think the 4.5, I think you wind up with like 67 turbines, something like that. So we've been saying 50 to 70 turbines is roughly what we're targeting, given the assumption that 5-6 years from now, when this project went to construction, we would be siting the same scale of turbine that we are today. Now, will that be the case? There is a 7.2 megawatt turbine in the world now. Will there be better ones? Probably. That's been the way the industry has evolved over the course of the last 5, 7, 10 years. A few things that people generally want to understand in thinking about a wind project. What does it mean for roads? What does it mean? What does the decommissioning picture look like? These are common concerns that we hear. In order to permit a project in Ohio, we basically need to provide for both the study, the logistics, and the cost of removing the project. And so before we break ground, we actually have to post a bond that will cover the complete removal of the project. And then that plan and the bond needs to be reevaluated every 5 years so that we can increase because the price of things doesn't go down. So the price of removing a wind project isn't going to be the same in 2032 as it is in 2052 or 2062. So we need to keep upping that bond so that it will cover the actual present day cost of removing the project. Everything about our project is very heavily negotiated. So we really don't have the ability or the desire to run roughshod over the entire county and dictate where things are going to go. We have clauses in our lease that engage the landowners in the siting of turbines. So we don't just say it's going here, it's going here, it's going here. We have clauses in our leases that say we're going to work with the landowners so that we can find the most appropriate places where, yes, we can take some farmland out of production, but we'll do it in a way that supports and sustains the farmer's larger operation, right? How much ground does a wind turbine take up? It takes about a half an acre of footprint. It takes about a 3-acre footprint to build it, right? So it has about a half-acre permanent impact for each turbine location, and then it has about a 3-acre temporary impact around it, right? So that's, and essentially the reason for the 3 acres is that's roughly the radius that it takes to turn a blade truck all the way around and get it back out of that location. So, so the other thing I didn't mention actually, I'm sorry, with in terms of facilities, roads. We also have roads that go to each turbine location. So roads, collections, substation, O&M, switchyard, turbines. Those are the basic elements. Yes, sir.
So what's the need that brought you here?
The need.
Where's the need?
Yes, why? Does that have anything to do with the data center?
What are you gearing up for?
Well, we sell electricity. We sell electricity onto the grid, and the demand for electricity is going up. And part of what makes, Ohio is a difficult place to develop wind, as I said. The reason we keep trying to do it is because it's also a place with a lot of load centers around. And so there is enormous demand and dramatically increasing demand. So the projections on how much that demand is going to increase, data centers or no data centers, is dramatic. And so there is a marketplace here for selling electricity.
Well, we
And
don't want it.
That's part of
Yeah, the
life.
data
don't
center
want
came
none
in
of it.
without us wanting it, that just happens. Not
Yes.
happy about that.
So with everything in mind here, how is this actually gonna help our community? I mean,
Yes,
you guys
that's
are gonna
what we
make all
wanna
kinds of
know.
money. What is it gonna do to our community? How's it gonna help us?
And can we guarantee if the power is made, is it gonna go to us first, or is it gonna go to the data center first?
It's going to go onto the grid.
And they determine, who's gonna determine who gets the what?
PJM is
Yeah.
PJM and your utility. We sell the power to the utility.
Yeah,
Or
So we come last together, that's not
we
surprising.
will, we will.
but the way the grid works, the actual electrons come off the grid at the nearest place to the generation. So yeah, is it going to be, is the electrons that are generated here going to be used in Montana? No. Are they going to be used here in Sheffield? I can't guarantee that. It's going to go onto the grid north of here and go wherever the grid operators who manage the supply and demand across the grid dictate that it needs to go at any given time. What's
Thank
that?
you for being honest.
Folks, I'm not a proponent of any of this, believe me. But every year you select who you buy electricity from. My electricity right now, I live in Sheffield Township, I'm buying electricity from Texas. So that's how it's gonna happen. I retired from the CEI, so I got a little bit of background. This is incomplete as far as the high lines that are going through here, but
It's incomplete.
once that electrons go onto the grid, you select where you buy your electricity. It's not up to him.
No, it's not.
I'm sorry, did you have a second part of your question? I feel like you,
Well, my question was, how's this gonna benefit?
how's it going to benefit? Yes.
I realize you guys are gonna benefit. How's our community gonna benefit from this? We
Yep.
give up land, we look at it, how's it gonna benefit us?
Yep. So obviously the landowners that we work with make money for working with us, right? Naturally. So there are lease payments that go to local landowners within the project area, of course. But then there's also property tax dollars, and whether that's in the form of property taxes or whether Ohio eliminates property taxes and it's in the form of a pilot agreement, there will be some payment of property taxes on a very large, very expensive piece of infrastructure. So the standard pilot agreements for wind farms in Ohio has generally been about $9,000 per megawatt, which is about with a 300 megawatt project is about 2.7 million per year. That gets, and depending on where the turbines actually get arrayed, it goes proportionally into individual townships, it goes into school districts, it goes into wherever. And in some cases, we may need to upgrade infrastructure in order to do the things we need to do, which may mean improved roads, bigger roads, better surfaced roads. It's hard to know for sure. We don't know where anything is going at this point. So, but, you know, in terms of community benefits, I mean, there is construction jobs for sure. There are a handful of technician jobs, which are very high skill, very high paying jobs associated with maintaining a wind farm. And, you know, and there is the community spending that all of those people are going to do while they're here. And so they, just like me, you know, we're eating at restaurants and staying in hotels and going to stores and doing, you know, doing the things that you do living life in this community. We would be doing that too.
Rob,
So,
that
yes.
tax revenue, does it stay where the turbines are? Is there any tax revenue if you put a transmission line from the turbines, say hypothetically there's nothing in Sheffield, but we have a transmission line running through there? Is there any tax revenue from that? Or is it just where the turbines are located?
I mean, I think it's largely driven by where the turbines are located, but I mean, much of that goes into the county, and Sheffield is part of the county.
Well, I would interject that there's no high voltage transmission line in Sheffield Township.
There is not.
There is not.
That was my very first point, was that
It's in
Sheffield, I'm only here because we are proposing 0 wind turbines for Sheffield. The only reason Sheffield is even covered slightly on that map is because there's a possibility of a location along that line that could cross a corner of Sheffield Township. That's the only reason we're here. So I'm primarily here to just sort of talk broadly about wind power to support the decision that your trustees need to make as far as whether or not to support this kind of development or not. Yes, sir.
Okay, so you mentioned the construction crew spending money in the area. Where do they typically stay, and are they local construction companies, or do you pull them from outside cities like Detroit?
It varies. And so it's hard to know, and because neither we nor
question.
anybody, I'm sorry.
It's a two-part question, but go ahead.
Okay.
I had another question.
Well, neither we nor anyone else has ever developed or built a wind farm in Ashtabula County, so I don't know exactly where people would do their spending in Ashtabula County.
Okay.
It would probably also depend roughly on where the actual work is happening. But, I mean, do we use local contractors? We make every effort to. And OPSB also has a requirement that 50% of the labor force that builds the project has to be from within Ohio. So they are Ohio jobs.
So Columbus.
What's that?
Columbus or Cleveland would come in?
I have no control
Okay.
over that. And, you know,
Fair.
and also a lot of it is very specialized work. So, and part, you know, one of the conundrums, right, is that are there people in Ashtabula County who know how to build a wind farm? Maybe. And yeah, there may be some hiring from amongst those people. But yeah, but we work with local engineering firms in large part because they understand these areas better. We work with local surveyors. We work with local biologists because they know the lay of the land better than we do. So all of the sort of biological and wildlife work that's going to happen before we even break ground, that is all using locally based contractors and consultants. Yes.
Part 2.
Sure.
We are kind of geared towards the tourism industry, where if you bring in these outside contractors, they're going to have to stay someplace. So either they stay in Erie or Cleveland, or they stay in our area and they trash the hotels. Because I don't know if you've ever been on the road, but if you go out to West Texas, you go out to any place with their heavy infrastructure being built, I'm telling you, there's mud through the hallways. So how does that work for a tourism area?
I mean, I'm staying in Austinburg, and I haven't seen
Perfect
anybody
point.
there yet. So.
Well, they're not building turbines yet either, buddy.
Right. Yes.
So what kind of noise pollution are these gonna generate? So you got 50 of them sitting in somebody's X farm, and how much noise is that gonna give you?
Well, it depends on how they're arrayed, but so in order to, we can't site these things next to an occupied dwelling. So one of the challenges that we face in trying to design one of these projects is that, okay, yes, we've already identified these places on the map that we know we need to stay away from without ever having set foot here. Once we do set foot here, now we begin to recognize that there's a whole host of other places that we need to stay away from as well. And through the permitting process, we also begin to catalog all of the historical and cultural resources that we need to stay away from, and all of the housing density. We need to do surveys to identify every occupied dwelling, and then we need to model what the actual sound consumption at each of those locations is going to be. And it has to stay beneath a certain standard in order for us to site the turbine there.
Is that in megahertz?
Sorry?
Is it in megahertz?
It's in dBA. dBA, yeah, sound pressure, yes.
I have a question. Why didn't we hear about any of this too recently? Because you guys already had leases and everything, yet they were saying you guys weren't trying to keep it quiet. So why didn't we hear about any of this till now? That's my question.
Well, I think a large part of why you heard about it was because we had success in leasing, and because your commissioners initiated this process to engage with the SB 52
So you're saying they
process.
did help you guys? Okay, that's a good answer.
I'm sorry?
So they did help you guys get this rolling? The commissioners did? You said they initiated with you guys?
No,
They
I
initiated
wouldn't
the
say so.
meetings for each township.
Okay.
Yeah, our actions spurred this discussion on a larger scale.
Well, I thank you for that.
Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
So I was wondering if Apex is a Virginia-based company, but in 22 partnered with South Korea, and now South Korea has a 60% stake in Apex Energy.
Yeah, no. That's, I think we have an insurance provider that is based out of South Korea.
I saw numerous locations that you partnered with them, because they're
In
leading in green
2022,
energy.
we partnered with Ares Capital Management, which basically bought a stake in Apex. But this also kind of came about with our pivot from developing projects to sell to developing projects to own and operate. And so basically, for Apex was founded in 2009, and for its first 10, 12 years, we basically would develop a project. We would go through this entire process. We would permit the project. In some cases, we would build the project, and then we would look for a buyer, right? Because we needed to get a payday in order to distribute that into our further development objectives, to the rest of our
Well, I'm just
portfolio.
wondering where it's coming from that they have a 60% stake in the Virginia-based Apex Energy Company as of now, today.
Okay. What do you mean where it's coming? I don't understand what you mean where
You're
it's coming.
saying that South Korea doesn't have a 60% stake in Apex Energy?
I'm saying South Korea does not have a 60% stake in Apex, yes.
So why are there numerous sites stating that?
I don't know.
And then the other thing, like I've seen a lot of pictures of the contractors, and they are from out of state, working in other states. Like you said, a lot of Michigan workers are being pictured outside of other site builds. You know, I
Okay.
hear a lot of maze, and we don't know, and possibly, and
Yeah.
like, that's
like I said,
really,
we
that's
don't have
really
a
nice
project yet.
lingo for you to use.
I'm sorry.
But that's very nice lingo for you to use, but then it makes it difficult for the people that live in the area. I don't
Okay.
care if it's not in Sheffield. I don't want it here anywhere on Lake Erie.
Yes.
And you can't guarantee that this helps us. Power does get generated in numerous, like he said, he's buying power from Texas. So you can't say that the power is gonna help the grid here. It might be going out west.
It would still help the grid as far as available power, because that's a national situation.
Well, they also, I've read that Apex Fund generates a lot of the data center powers.
So, yeah.
That cannot be true, and because the data centers, unless they power their own system with their own generators, they're tying into the grid.
Right.
So they're just buying off the grid. It's not got anything
Which
to
is
do
causing
with
everybody's
this guy or the
prices to go
CEI or Perry or wherever the generation's coming from, it's
And
coming out
actually,
the grid.
the data center proposed for this area, they were here before we were.
Well,
And we didn't know about them until we got here. So, I mean, but they look, you know, as I've said in other meetings, they look for a lot of the same characteristics that we do. They look for an area on the grid.
Where people will fall for
No,
the money.
well, maybe,
I don't
but
see these going
I'm saying they
away.
look for a place along the grid. They look for a high voltage transmission line the same way we do, right? We're looking to inject power onto it. They're looking to take power off of it, right? And, but also, I mean, okay, I've seen the AI, ironically, AI searches for apex and data centers, which I think is the pinnacle of irony, but it's, if you search for apex and data centers, yes, Google has data centers, and yes, we have sold power to Google. We haven't developed data centers, right? We work with technology companies that are looking for electricity, but it's not necessarily data centers. We've sold power to Verizon, we've sold power to Constellation, which includes Comcast, and you know, we have sold power to technology companies. Technology companies are now also beginning to explore data centers. Apex is not developing data centers, and we're certainly not developing one here.
But, you know, you put up 70 turbines, how much quicker will the data center go up, you know?
Yes, sir.
Hi.
I'm sorry, I'll come back to you in just a second. You had your hand up for a minute, but yeah, go ahead.
Just kind of address the people first. So some of the bald eagle nests that are in the county are right in close proximity to where they want to put some of these things. So that's a thing to think about.
Except that we haven't said where we're putting anything yet.
Well, I mean, the leases, anyway.
Okay.
And then safety. These things are what, 600, 700 feet tall? If they do catch fire, as some of them do, the firefighters in the county have the capability of dealing with that.
That's a great point. And part of our development process is that we provide all of that training, and we work with local first responders to game out all of the things that can go wrong, both with the construction of a wind farm and with the operations of a wind farm, with what a turbine looks like, how it's built, what fire suppression technologies are already built into it, and then how to respond to a turbine fire should one exist, or to any other facility fire anywhere else on the facility. So that's you know, we've gotten to maybe 5% of our development process. That's part of the other 95%. I'm sorry, you've been waiting a while.
Oh, it's fine. My name's Katie O'Neill. I'm an environmental lawyer. I have a master's in energy regulation and law, and I do appreciate the renewable energy economy. Ohio is a hub for renewable energy. We've been making solar panels up in Toledo for decades. Southern Ohio has 35 municipalities utilizing 100% renewable energy today. So I appreciate the contributions that you are offering with renewable energy. My question is, will the public buildings all have solar panels, and will you be helping with the structural integrity of those buildings to hold them? 2, with wind turbines, will you be painting one of the blades black, which has been found to decrease bird fatalities by a great number because they can see it?
I've read that too, and yeah, I've read that too, and I find it interesting, but I also find it interesting that no one's actually adopted it or enforced it. So, and that's where I'm a little caught myself in where's the science meet the policy.
Wonderful, because renewable energy has been set up to fail from the beginning, right? Making turbines in California on a bird migrating calf. That was known. And so it doesn't surprise me that we have not been adapting to the latest research. And so I am compelling you to do so, right? Rather than just hear the reports and say no one's doing it, I'm asking, will you be a part of that movement in protecting the birds if you are selling this renewable energy as a win for the environment and for communities?
Yeah, no, I like that point, and it's, and yes, Apex does support that, furthering that research. And I mean, the project that I just finished in Maine, we're out there doing a whole bunch of bat surveys so that we can try to initiate a smart curtailment regimen. So basically, this is changing the subject a little bit from birds to bats, but we generally recognize that bats are active during certain times of the year, and we curtail the turbines, which therefore limits the output of the power they can generate during those times. But those times are also huge. And so we're working on trying to understand with greater granularity exactly what parts of the day, like, are there certain points where bats are active?
The night.
Yeah.
Right.
But are there certain times that we can identify and curtail those turbines more precisely to protect the bats, but also promote the energy output, right? So that everybody wins. So yes, we do engage with emerging research. We actually do some of it ourselves. In terms of painting one of the blades black, we also don't build the turbine. So we work with a turbine manufacturer that builds the turbine. So we work with either Vestas, or I don't think we've worked with Nordex yet, but Nordex is one of them. GE makes turbines. Vestas is one of the industry leaders. When Vestas starts to do that, we will certainly be doing it because that's the product that they'll be selling. But can we take it upon ourselves to paint one of Vestas's turbines black? I actually don't think that we can, because I don't think that works with our turbine supply agreement. So a wind farm is a partnership between a lot of people, but it is between Apex and the turbine manufacturer. So anyway, just a complicating factor to that. Your earlier point about buildings and solar panels.
Yes, like this building could have solar on it if it had good roofing.
I love that idea, and we do, when we get a little, that other 95% of our development process, and another one of those benefits to local communities, we have a community grant program that gives smaller sided grants to the communities that we work in to support them promoting those kinds of projects. But do we do rooftop solar? We do not. That's just not something that we do.
So
that's actually a completely different industry, ironically enough.
Do you partner with farmers then, so that they are getting solar and renewable energy and allowing like goats to graze underneath, or their sheep?
No, we have solar. We have utility. We develop utility scale projects, so we do both wind and solar. We have a few energy storage projects as well. But yes, we do agrivoltaics at some of our solar installations as well. So cattle and sheep. Yes, ma'am.
I've read that it takes 8 tons of critical minerals to produce 1 megawatt of power for these windmills.
Okay.
All of these critical minerals, copper and other things, to produce power.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's a good thing. There's other ways to produce.
But I mean, the copper is going into any kind of electricity conducting technology, right? Yes, it's going to go into a wind turbine because it's producing electricity, but it's going to go into anything that produces or conducts electricity.
Okay.
So I hear what you're saying, but I don't.
Another thing, these blades are not recyclable, so they go into landfills.
Yeah, they used to.
So we end up with a big pile of blades from 50 windmills.
No, and that used to be a serious concern, and it's still a valid question, but more and more wind turbine blades are recyclable. They're being recycled into next generation wind turbine blades, but then they're also being used for all kinds of infrastructure projects. They're being made into footbridges and they're being made into, this, that, and everything else. The composite materials in a wind turbine blade have applications that we're sort of constantly discovering and applying them to. So the days of wind turbines in landfills.
Tear these apart.
I'm sorry?
The science information I read said it was difficult to tear these apart so they could be used for something else.
Yeah.
That they can't be used for
Some
anything
of the older turbines, yes, that's absolutely true. Yeah. And like I said, the turbine technology has advanced quite dramatically just in the last 10 years. But that was one of the primary criticisms of the industry 10 years ago. And the industry has responded to that, recognized that it was a problem, that it was a public relations black eye, and is trying to come up with ways to soften that.
How many years does a turbine last?
They're rated for about 30 years.
And then what happens to it?
And
We have a lot of oil wells around here that are no longer active and
Yeah.
just sit there on the property.
yeah,
So what happens to them?
so as I described earlier, the decommissioning process, we need to set aside money to deconstruct and remove the project before we can build it. So there is a bond set aside that if the project outlives apex, that money is already sitting there and can be deployed for the removal of the project.
That didn't happen in Conneaut.
Right, they
Conneaut
sat
took it on
for
the
years.
Yeah. Yeah, yes.
If there's a resident, I live in Lenox, I own property in Dorset, but I'm here representing the Conservation Club down the road here. So if a resident has a question before me, that's fine. If they don't,
Well, these don't run all the time, right? Because of the wind velocity, and because, I'll get it out after a while. And also,
They operate variably,
they
yes.
have to be shut down. So that energy has to be produced by what, natural gas when they shut all these down?
Well, when they shut all of them down,
If it's, we get some hard winters up here.
yeah,
So if they have to shut them down to keep the blades from freezing and damaging the turbine, then natural gas kicks in and produces the electricity.
well, so like I said, I just built a project in Maine, and we have the exact same concern there that you would have here. And there was a lot of very, high profile issues in Texas when Texas had an ice storm, which they don't usually have. But in Texas, a lot of the wind projects didn't invest in de-icing technology on their turbine blades. And so there are any number of different mechanisms that enable the operators of the turbine to not operate them in conditions where they could ice up, and also to mitigate the icing when it does happen. But yes, that is another sort of older industry issue that has gradually
So
been
when they have to shut
addressed.
them down, how does the energy get produced?
It comes out.
Is it natural gas?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's the energy is variable. It's like solar. Like solar's not going to generate at night, right? So I mean, and wind power, like solar, like battery, like natural gas, it's one of a multitude of different forms of energy generation that powers our grid. And so, is the output going to be consistent throughout the entire year? No, of course not. That's the nature of the wind. But that's what our grid has been sort of reconditioned for, is being able to accommodate variable sources of power generation.
Once a turbine reaches its limit or it stops working, how long is the wait time before it's decommissioned and taken out?
It varies. So if a turbine is disabled or damaged, so the landowner actually makes what we call the nameplate capacity. So they make rent. They make their operations rent based on the nameplate output of that turbine. So if it's a 6 megawatt turbine, they get paid based on the 6 megawatts as well as however many acres they have leased to us. So they get that 6 megawatts even though that turbine is never going to generate 6 megawatts, right? Because it's just not, because it is variable. So, but therefore, it's also in our interest as the operator of the project to make sure that turbines are not offline for very long. So we have every financial incentive to repair damaged turbines and replace them if they are not repairable, so that we continue to generate that energy, because that's what we're selling at the end of the day. Right?
What's a normal turnaround time?
From a damaged turbine to a replaced one, I mean, I think a lot of, I don't know about Ohio, I know a lot of the states, you have to either repair it or present a plan for repairing it within 18 months. But part of that is also just the supply chain for a turbine. So a turbine is kind of like your car, like pieces of it are manufactured here, there, and everywhere all around the planet. And so just, we can't just will a new turbine into existence. That's a pretty major procurement operation to get a new turbine on site.
But you
So,
said the landowner continues to get that money.
But the landowner continues to
whether it's
get
working
paid.
or not.
Yep, exactly.
How close together are the turbines?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I've been saying about a half a mile, but that sounds very vague and weird. So then I go through a very tedious process of explaining how we come to the half a mile. So let me see if I get this right. It's basically 5 rotor diameters is for one of these large modern turbines. It's 5 rotor diameters. Each of those rotors is about 240 to 250 feet long. So a diameter is 500 times 5 is about 2,500 feet, which is roughly half a mile. That's 5 rotor diameters is the answer, but nobody really knows what that means. So, yes, sir.
I don't actually have a question, but I got a comment. I don't know this man, never met this man. I thought he was a college professor. With that said, the company I work for is a cryogenic company, and we draw a lot of energy. We've had to shut down a lot lately because we're drawing too much off the grid. Okay, we do fine. I travel around northeast Ohio quite a bit, and in fact, where my company is right across from where the old A and the B plants. I get to watch every day. One plant's gone, the other one's almost gone. There's also Lakeshore, it's gone. There's also Avon Lake, it's gone. There's WT Samus down there off Ohio River.
East Lake also. East Lake.
East Lake also.
Yeah, they're the big producer.
When you look at that, that power was generated here, but it doesn't mean it stayed here. That power was generated here by local people. Nobody's there anymore except for maybe some county people. I also happen to look at all the expansion of companies in our county. Lake County's getting hammered hard with expansion. Cleveland, Youngstown, and I sit there and think, where's this power going to come from? Because we're going to have the same bitch when they start telling us we got to have brownouts. I understand, we don't want it in our backyard, we don't want it in our front yard, but somebody's got to have it. And we better think about a little give and take and making assumptions about how bad it's going to be. Or I always use this term, a person like you is the first in the line of fire, just as I am for my company. I'm the first in the line of fire, and I'm going to catch hell for things I have no control over. So I want folks to think about that. I'm not taking up for him, but you got to be realistic too. That's all I'm saying.
Used to be a teacher, actually.
Like he was saying, CEI, their production capability used to be here, and their usage, what they were selling, used to be here. And they keep tearing down the plants, tearing down the plants, tearing down the plants. Everything's gone because they can't just idle it. I was told that they would have to pay taxes on it if it just sat there ready to go.
You guys can answer that.
So they tear everything up. Now, we're behind the 8 ball. Talk about these
Data
centers. You know, they're sucking every bit of power they
We
can.
don't have power to give.
So,
Right.
we're at a crossroad here. The only way you can get that, build another nuclear plant or another gas plant, or go with these wind turbines. Like you were saying,
Also, hydroelectricity is an untoward.
Oh, hydro, yeah, that's the best.
Ohio really
Yeah.
needs to invest in.
But
Water turbines.
we've got to decide what we want in our backyard. We say you don't want a wind turbine, you want a nuke plant, another nuke plant. You know, it's got to come from somewhere, because no one wants to wake up in the morning and their TV doesn't work because they don't have the power, or their coffee.
Yep. Well, and nobody wanted cell towers either. But they wanted
Exactly.
bars.
Everyone
They wanted
wants
bars.
the phone. Everyone wants, but they did, you know, because I heard the same thing when I worked at CEI. You know, people were complaining about the high voltage tower. The high voltage tower. Oh, I don't want that in my backyard. But everyone wants to be able to wake up in the morning and their toaster work. You know what I mean?
Not necessarily. I know a lot of people that live pretty conservative and off-grid. I avoid AI. I mean, so you making the assumption that people are finding all their information and off of AI and Google View and,
No, I just got one.
and I
piece of
thought they were also in the process of firing up 3 Mile Island again
They are.
to help with the grid.
Right. And they are talking about new nuclear, another nuclear power plant down in southern Ohio. And Perry Nuclear just got renewed for 20 years. And it was only built for 40 on the cliff
And they're
edge.
even talking about mini nuclear plants, not the
SMRs.
large scale, but smaller ones.
Right, but like,
SMRs.
when you create waste that will outlive all of us,
That's bad.
it is bad, especially when you're not tapping into what the divine creator has given us, which is, you know, the sun and the wind and the water and, you know, being able to use anaerobic digesters on farms, capturing methane gas from our landfills. Like there's a plethora of energy sources that we could be tapping into other than fossil fuels and nuclear. And that's why this meeting is important, because we could potentially be moving forward in a green economy, which will attract young people to Ohio that wants to participate and be a part of that future. But we have to be smarter and learn from the lessons of our mistakes.
That doesn't seem to happen though.
Huh?
That doesn't seem to happen though. They move in, make money, things deteriorate, they move out to the next area. And it's always the poorer counties where people are lured by money. People aren't worried about the green energy. They're looking at the cash grab and going, sure, set up here.
Well, something else is happening too, is the people that have to live next to this, the property values, how are they gonna sell the property? I mean, all of a sudden, boom, you got 50 wind turbines next door, it's not yours, you don't get any benefit out of it, it's your neighbor got the benefit. And all of a sudden, you have 100 acres and nobody wants it because they don't wanna live there.
Okay,
If you've
well,
ever
it's not
traveled
gonna
out
fit
west
next door.
and seen these things, it's terrible. Gotta get out there into New Mexico and Texas where there's hundreds and hundreds of miles of these things. It's terrible, terrible.
Well, the ridge tops of West Virginia also have made it kind of beautiful. If you're ever driving to Thomas or Davis, West Virginia, you will see a ridge line of wind turbines, and it does look nice. And it isn't hurting.
Because you're just-
And I get it. I'm an environmentalist through and through. And I do think that we can do this safely, but I'm also looking at the alternatives. And they are much more dangerous than the renewable.
Does seem like the waste is all evils.
What about hydro?
Right?
Oh,
We
yeah.
have a lake.
Go ahead, Chief.
I have
Yeah,
a
we
simple
do.
question.
Sure.
Okay.
You did,
Every
Those
year
kind
or
of
two,
things.
every year or two, I get notices in the
No,
mail
those got
saying it's
weight,
time
yeah.
to choose a new energy supplier. Okay? And all I keep seeing is my cost for electricity, just like anybody else, keeps going up and up and up. Does this putting in wind turbines to help support the grid, as you say, right? Is this gonna help with my cost for electricity, or is my electricity still gonna keep going up?
Chances are your electricity is going to keep going up. The cost of everything is going to keep going up. And I mean, yeah, I'll be honest with you about that. Like, there's nothing that we do that is going to diminish the cost of electricity. Now, there's nothing that we do that is going to directly raise it either. So there's a lot of theories that, you know, because we're putting all this renewable energy onto the grid, the utilities are basically passing along all of those upgrade costs to the consumer. That's not exactly the case. The utilities are passing along the costs of maintaining a fairly archaic infrastructure, but all of the upgrades that need to be done for us to inject power are funded by us. So the project that I did in Maine, I think we spent about $54 million to upgrade the grid in order to make way for the power that we put onto it. And that had the benefit of not only modernizing the grid in that area, but it also created some resilience and reliability in a rural area that didn't have it. So yeah, power outages became a little bit less frequent as a result of more modern infrastructure to enable the project.
So in this area, we also have, we've recently had some really bad storms, major windstorms.
Yep.
Okay, and I've traveled all over this country, and I've seen some of these where a blade's completely missing, it's down on the ground, and I'll go by there again 6 months later and it's still sitting at the same place. I mean, so does that not diminish income, or whatever you want to call it, or power to the grid when this thing can't run anymore?
I mean, yeah, it should. And like I said, like, there should be the incentive there for the operator of that project to restore the turbine or decommission it, right? And so usually there's a regulatory impetus to, if you can't restore it or you won't restore it, you have to decommission it within a certain amount of time, which was a question from over here.
18
Yeah, but that incentive exists for us to restore that turbine to generating energy again. But also, you know, any damage that that turbine makes, if it is damaged or if a blade comes down, we're paying the crop damage for that, and we're paying for any mess that is made in the restoration of the turbine as well. So we're covering the costs of that as well. Yes, sir.
The 300 megawatts, how does that compare to, say, the old coal-fired power plants that we had in Ashtabula? Anybody?
It was a 250 megawatt.
250
Well, that
megawatts?
was one generator.
Yeah.
Plus you had 450s, and C plant were all about 40 megawatts.
The sheet plant,
That's
smaller.
So this,
Thank you, because I didn't know the answer to that.
So this here doesn't even compare to the coal-fired plant?
No.
They had one up
No.
at Eastlake that was 600 megawatt, big one.
Although those plants, they were never gonna stay in business anyway because of that, they were just outmoded.
Right,
Fly
yeah.
ash control alone was
Sure.
over there.
Like I say, the country is at a crossroads right now.
Well, and
Everyone needs more power.
Right.
How are you gonna generate it?
And one of the conundrums for non-renewable energy is the amount of time it takes and the cost to build it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the values of renewable energy, is that it's comparatively, it's cheaper. I mean, it's an enormous upfront expense to build the thing, but once it's built, it operates, right? But also, like, coal, natural gas, oil, you know, any of that is all subject to, the operating cost is all subject to the price of the fuel, which is driven by geopolitics that we have no control over whatsoever and have no way to predict. Whereas, okay, yeah, it's an enormous cost to build the thing. It's actually one of the fastest things we can build. And once we do,
But in the long run.
yeah.
It's up to Mother Nature.
Yes, sir.
Just one more.
Yeah.
Are there any, that you know, any coal-fired plants being built in America right now?
I don't know of any, but then that's kind of outside of my, that's not a business that I keep track of, I guess, so.
What's the responsibility of the person that's leasing the land to you?
What's
their responsibility, the homeowner?
What is there? Not really, not very much. We have a few restrictions on what they can develop in proximity to the turbines. But generally it means they just need to consult with us. Like, you know, if they want to drill a gas well, or if someone wants to drill a gas well in proximity to that foundation, we need to understand what that could potentially do to the structural integrity of the machine. So we need them to collaborate with us as they're developing their property. We have some restrictions in our lease about the height of buildings and like planting trees in proximity to the turbine that could grow up to a point where they disrupt the airflow into the machine and diminish the energy output. But generally, you know, generally a farm complex is going to be far enough away from the wind turbine that those restrictions rarely come into play.
Now, do you have to have a separate, like, driveway to wherever you have to go work on these turbines?
Yeah, so we have an access road that runs into every turbine. Yep.
And you maintain that, or does the property owner?
Yep, we maintain the road, and the landowner has full use of it as well. Yes.
Are there going to be like training and maintenance positions here locally? Is there like Auburn Career Center, or, you know, like, is there investment in making sure that the jobs that are created with renewable energy are local, and, you know, the youth are being trained? Or, you know, like in Southern Ohio, we went from coal to, you know, training coal workers for renewable energy.
No, that's well, and as a former teacher, that's one of my favorite parts of the job, is that we, you know, when we do one of these projects, we go out and do outreach to voc tech schools. Almost one of the first things we do is identify. So we've been to ATEC 2 or 3 times already to just talk to folks there and see, you know, hey, what does your curriculum look like, and is there a way that we can, you know, can we create some programs that will funnel students into this industry?
We have so many universities here in Ohio, and so, yeah, just making sure that you are investing in that.
Yeah, and I mean, at this point, we're investing time in it. You know, like I said, we have a community grant program, and that is something that, you know, we've given money to, is supporting voc tech programs as well. So, yes.
Have any townships made a resolution opposing the
I don't know, have you guys received any resolutions?
Yeah. How does that affect? How do you, if there's land leased already and the township makes a resolution to oppose the, is that a binding, legally binding contract, you know, the language that?
A resolution or lease?
Or lease, or you say, oh, we can't do anything in Cherry Valley? How does that work? So just say, for instance, Cherry Valley had that on the book. Cherry Valley Township, we oppose this. Does that throw a monkey wrench in the whole?
Yeah. Yeah, a big one.
You don't get your 300 or whatever.
Yeah, it throws a big wrench in it. Yeah, that's why I'm here. Yes, sir.
How are they lubricated?
How are they lubricated? Like any machine, it's, you know, grease and oil. Yep.
How much per turbine?
I mean, I think it varies, but I've heard up to 200 gallons per turbine.
And that's changed how often?
Is it? Yeah, I don't know if it's fully changed. I mean, they're maintained, I think, weekly, but I don't know that they climb the turbine to change it out every week. But they are monitored every week. And they're also monitored remotely, so that if the turbine is misbehaving in any way, they can detect those problems from afar and identify that turbine as one that needs to be assessed. So, yeah.
So 1,000 gallons a year per turbine?
200
to 1,000.
It's
a fair amount of oil and lubrication, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, 2 questions. One about an eagle, remind me. The other one, since this was the most recent question, so say the commissioners canvass the townships and they get a negative response and they decide to invoke 52 and they vote and they do all the meetings and stuff. boom, it's there. They can only govern 50 megawatts and above, right? Is that right?
Economically significant and large scale.
The cutoff's like 50,
I think it's 50.
50 kV. So has Apex ever backdoored them and went to the trustees? Because trustees can handle this.
And just build 7 50 megawatt projects?
No, built 7 49.9. Has that ever happened?
No.
No? Okay. All right. The question about the Eagles.
Yeah.
There's something circulating around the interwebs that somewhere out of Falls Church, Virginia, there's been a permit pulled for destruction of eagles from the U.S. Department of Wildlife, Fish and Game, or whatever it is.
Okay.
Is that true?
There is, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has a new eagle take permit, and I don't actually know all
What's
the
your
ins
bag
and outs
limit?
of how that works. But what's that?
What's the bag limit? Like, what's the limit on it?
Like how many?
How many can you get?
No, it doesn't work that way. It basically, I think it's designed such that we pay an enormous amount of money to have the permit, such that we don't have to pay damages in the event that one is taken.
One.
So it's basically paying on the front end versus on the back end.
So we have your word that you wouldn't do, going back to you wouldn't do an end round and go to all these townships that don't have zoning and put a 4.9 megawatt turbine station in there if you get the land leased.
Well, how am I going to connect them?
Don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, I can't.
And is
You
zoning
can't-
process in these leases?
And then you say that there's only 67 turbines, but the lease that's been circulating around with a trustee in another township, it says up to 100 and 400 megawatt power.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a requirement of the state of Ohio, was that we needed to provide in our lease preamble a broad assessment of the scope of the project.
That's your
And so our
calculation.
legal team decided that you should overshoot rather than undershoot. So we said 100 turbines and 400 megawatts when our objective was 300 megawatts and 50 to 70. Yes, sir.
Back to the legality of this.
Which part? There's legalities all over the place.
The bottom line, is it just up to trustees, or will it be an issue?
So the legalities on the resolution side is what you're... what you're
Yeah,
talking
will
about.
it be brought forth to the people on a ballot for election, or is it just a
I'll
couple
let
of
the elected
sure,
folks
you know,
know.
seriously,
Do
you know?
Answer that? Sure, Madam Chair. All right. So Senate Bill 52 provided counties with rather unique authority that actually supersedes local zoning, but on larger scale projects. So when you had mentioned the megawatts, there is authority on wind projects when they're economically significant or considered large scale. 50
Who
megawatts.
decides that?
Yeah.
Who decides that?
Decides what?
The
What's
scale.
a large,
What's a large scale?
So there's actually a definition in the statute. The statute has the definition. But it's greater than 50 megawatts. The commissioners have asked all 27 townships to contemplate resolutions in the unincorporated areas of the county. The commissioners only have authority over the unincorporated areas of the county. It's unlikely that a project of this scale would happen in a village or city, but I guess it could possibly happen, but we don't actually have any authority over that. The statute only references the unincorporated areas. So we provided information to the townships, a sample resolution for them to contemplate, and that's really what's triggered this conversation on a larger scale. And I think it's important, before I go into any more, that the commissioners haven't signed NDAs. I know that's been referenced on a couple Facebook groups. We haven't provided Apex with any grants. We haven't given them grants. We haven't given them tax incentives. So I want to make that clear. We're not investors. I think I can pretty safely say we're not investors in Apex. I didn't receive any contributions from Apex. I don't think any of us did.
We don't have any property that we would be leasing for a windmill.
I do not have that either. So it's important to get out there because there's been a lot of misinformation, and can't stress enough how important it is to learn the facts. The facts are important here because this isn't the only time we're going to be having this discussion. we might be having this discussion in another couple years on a nuclear project that's coming to Ashtabula County, or any number of other projects. So I think we have to be mindful of that. And we have to be respectful and respect the process. But anyway, so all townships, all 27 townships have these resolutions. They're contemplating it. We have asked for resolutions to be submitted back to the commissioners by September 1st. That then triggers the process at the county level. We'll then need to incorporate that into a map at the county level that would be considered by the commissioners at some point. We have to hold public hearings, we have to post it at public libraries, all those things. I know the attorney keeps nodding, but those are all requirements as part of this special statute. And then ultimately it'd be brought up to the commissioners for a vote.
I think it's important to note that the different options that the townships can provide to us.
Yeah, why don't you mention that?
So what we asked for the townships for feedback with the resolution is, do they want to permit wind farms or windmills any place in their township? Do they want to restrict them for the entire township? Or do they want to have certain areas that they designate? And so the township trustees have the option of presenting a resolution to the commissioners that then will give us some guidance on where the township trustees, who hopefully would have a better feel and the pulse on their communities directly than we may through all the different townships, they can then give us feedback and some guidance for us to follow on developing this overall map that kind of covers the entire county. So the township may say, we only think in this 2-block area would be okay for windmills. They could say the entire township is fine for windmills. Just this corridor along Route 193 is acceptable for windmills. Or no place in our township is acceptable for windmills. So that's the feedback that we're looking for from the townships.
So it won't come.
Let me finish.
To a vote by
the commissioner. So now I'm getting there. So the commissioners will ultimately contemplate the map, and then ultimately pass that map, and then that's actually subject to referendum. I think this just happened recently in Richland County. I think the commissioners did this in a very similar fashion. And as I understand it, it's a thumbs up or a thumbs down on the map as passed by the commissioners. But I think you have to gather so many signatures and submit that to the Board of Elections. Then ultimately the question can be posed to the electorate of the county. I think it's just the unincorporated areas of the county though. So the electorate would ultimately decide.
So that will happen?
If the residents pursue a referendum. Means it's subject to referendum. Our decision is subject to referendum.
And I think it's important to note that, Lynn, I'm not clear, Casey, and you're the parliamentarian here of this Board of Commissioners. But if there is a referendum, it's to either approve or deny the map.
Right.
So that's not approving or denying windmills for the county.
That is correct.
And so that could then revert back to
no restriction.
Whatever is permitted in the township, but local zoning doesn't address these larger scale projects.
Correct.
So voting down a map that would be adopted could potentially mean it's a free-for-all, that anything could take place.
So can I just ask, just because I'm a dork about this kind of stuff? If a referendum does happen, is that a vote of the entire county or just the portions of the county that you oversee?
I have to get clarification on that. I'll have to look at that. Go ahead.
I think it's the
whole
whole
county.
You guys should know, you guys spent $500,000 in Crawford County to get signatures.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna, it ties with that. Has Apex ever gone, after the commissioners have passed a resolution or gone through the process of saying, restricting anything over 50, megawatts, has Apex ever gone around, and I think she just touched on that, and solicited the amount of registered voters that voted in the previous gubernatorial to put a referendum on the ballot to get it passed by the people? Has it ever happened, and what was the outcome of that?
Well, SB 52 has only been around since 2021.
So it's not happened?
To my knowledge, it hasn't happened. No.
Okay.
I have a question real quick.
Katie?
Yes.
You're an attorney, correct?
I'm a lawyer, yes.
And I've worked with tons of attorneys in Northeast Ohio and in Columbus Environmental, and I just apologize, I've never heard of you or worked with you before, so where is your practice at? Where do you practice?
So I practice in governance.
No, your location.
Currently I'm in Sugar Falls.
Okay, so with this being an Asheville County project, it just kind of, I want residents here to know facts, that an attorney just shows up at the Sheffield, we're nearing the end of the township meetings, and now all of a sudden, a pro-green attorney shows up at this meeting. Were you paid by Apex to be here?
Oh no, I was born in Geneva, Ohio, and I just camped at Geneva State Park last night because I love it, and I'm considering moving, to Ashtabula County, but right now I'm working on 2 farms in another location, and being at the lake is just too long of a drive. So when I'm not working with local governance and working with people to, celebrate and support democracy, what we're seeing right here, I am working on farms and environmental education to help people, make good decisions when they're adults and they're running for office and they're sitting at these meetings. I am not paid by Apex.
In any way promise anything, any type of...
Oh my goodness, no. I was just at a data center meeting in Conemaugh for the second reading of the moratorium, and was told to come down here because I have a master's degree from Vermont Law School in energy regulation and law, and quite frankly, I personally am promoting hydroelectricity for Ohio's future energy needs.
So I want to just expand on the process a little bit too, and I know Robert referenced it in his early remarks. So ultimately, once we pass this map, I think will give developers a greater sense of certainty of where this should be allowable or not allowable in our county. But I also want to stress too, and you mentioned in your early remarks, but this is a concept, right? I mean, really, you're in concept phase, and we're not building a windmill tomorrow, because that's another misconception. Because I was sent a message that said something that
wind turbine, not windmill, wind turbines.
Okay, that they were already actively building a wind turbine. That land was being cleared. So I want to stress that as well, that this is really just in the concept phase, and that ultimately, should after a final map's passed, you still come to the commissioners, I believe, for consideration, for a thumbs up or a thumbs down vote or a modified vote.
Assuming we actually get a chance to develop a project.
Correct.
Then we come back to, as like I said earlier, we come back to this forum and work with the commissioners
so
again.
Can't stress enough how early it is in the process here.
And we're required to have a series of public hearings at that time too.
I think there's a public hearing.
And our objective here is really just to support this conversation, but yes, of course, we want to be allowed to actually develop a project that we could then submit to this very rigorous permitting process. So to our mind, we're feeling as though, well, we have to get a permit for a project we don't have in order to then get an opportunity to develop the thing and then have to get a permit again. So from our perspective, we're feeling a little boxed in here. So, but we're just trying to support some conversation and
The man beside you has a question.
Yeah, actually, there's several. Actually, I'm gonna go back here because your arm must be getting tired.
For Sheffield trustee, there's a map of the airport, so just for Sheffield, there's no way that they have to be blocked at some point. I don't know what the radius is of that, but there's I can't even have a ham radio at my house over here because of the airport.
Yeah.
So I just want, does anybody know how far that goes?
I think it's a 5-mile radius from the airport.
There's on the GIS map, you can actually pull up the
airport zone.
The airport zone, right? Because you have an approach path in each end of the airport. So that's on there. You can overlay it on that. They actually, county has a really good resource. If you go to the auditor's site, and this is what screwed me up, is I couldn't find the stupid tab in the middle. It's right up there at the center. You drop down and you can go to a map. There's a little hamburger menu over there. You can clean it up and you can overlay data. Anybody can do it. And you can overlay data for leases. You can overlay the airport, the different entities, hospitals, whatever. It's really kind of a neat system that they have.
You had a question, man?
I did. How many permanent jobs will be created for Ashtabula County residents?
So to operate a functioning wind farm at this scale, probably between 6 and 10. It's not a lot. So the bulk of the jobs would be construction of it. There would be a small handful of operators of the wind project. Yeah.
So the purpose of this meeting was so that the trustees could, or the township trustees could know how their constituents feel about this.
Yes, just gauge a temperature from our residents.
So knowing that we're going to create a few jobs, knowing that lands and properties could be devalued in our area and in our county, frankly, knowing that we in Sheffield and in Ashtabula County cannot solve the world and countrywide problems of the energy problem, I'd just like to say that the constituents of your township are against this and would like to see it complete. We don't want any part or any components of their project in Sheffield Township.
Thank you.
Yes.
This is the feedback we're looking for. Thank you, Mrs. Smith.
You have a question?
In general, this is kind of hypothetical, but if any trustees have, what do they call it, the land where the proposed things are going to be, if any trustees have been approached, can they be recused from having any kind of say in the process?
So I would encourage anybody that feels that they could be conflicted to seek out the advice of legal counsel.
So I think, if they're on an official basis, I don't think they should have a say, if they're personally involved, I don't think they should have a say in the official part.
I have 2 acres, so I don't know what can you do with that.
I have 2.5
Depends on where
acres.
they are.
I have a general comment. How many leases do you have that are signed that have not been recorded at the recorder's office that you're holding?
That haven't been recorded yet. Probably not more than 2 or 3.
But you have all 9,000 acres.
I'm sorry?
But you have all 9,000 acres.
Oh, we have more like 13,000 acres. The 9,000 was just what we needed to get into the queue. We have about 13,000 acres.
But you need 30?
Yeah, well, that's what we're projecting. To build a project of the scale we want to build, we're projecting that we would need about 30,000 acres leased. The impact area would be a minuscule fraction of that, but what we would need to lease would be roughly 30,000 acres. Yes?
You spoke earlier about placement in homes. What is the minimum setback from a home or a business from one of the turbines?
I think I think from an occupied dwelling, I want to say it's 2.1x so 2.1 times the blade tip height.
Which would be about what?
Well, let's go big and say it's a 680-foot turbine, so 2.1 times 680.
Can I say something? In the lease, anybody that signs this, you waive all setback lines, every setback line imaginable. And I've been to all these meetings,
Not the
and you know
occupied
you're gonna
dwelling
get asked
setback.
this question. You would think you would have the exact answers. You know the residents are gonna ask you this.
They don't waive the occupied dwelling setback.
I have one more. And will they all have lights, right? So you require lights.
They are required to have lights, but we also install aircraft detection lighting systems such that the lights are only illuminated if there's aircraft that necessitate it.
Well, I mean, where we're at, there's always air.
At night?
Where it was to.
At night.
There's
At night.
an airport right in Denmark.
My flight utilizes it, I live right behind it. There's planes all day and all night flying around.
And the military planes out of Youngstown, they're always on the low.
Well, it only gets activated, I think, under 6,000 feet. something like that. So if they're flying under 6,000 feet, it would activate the lights for the amount of time that they're in the airspace. Once they clear the dome, the lights go back on.
That must be different than what I've seen out west. I just came back from Phoenix, drove at night.
Yep.
And you see red lights flashing in unison. for
Yeah,
miles.
older turbines, absolutely. And yeah, so older projects that were cited before, let's say 2023 even. The project that I did in Maine, it was one of the first projects that we installed, and that came online last year. So it's fairly new technology, but it is becoming standard. And actually in Maine, it was being required of all recently permitted wind projects that they had to, if the FAA allows it, have radar detection or radar activated lighting or aircraft detection lighting system, however you want to refer to it. Yes, ma'am.
What happens when the homeowner that has the lease on their property either is deceased and there's no one left in the family, they decide to sell and move? What happens to that contract?
The lease goes with the land, so the lease essentially attaches to the deed, and so it would
So the new owner
go
would
to the new owner.
automatically be involved in that?
Correct.
Every part of the sale?
Yep. But you also, at that point, if there's a wind turbine on the property, you know exactly what revenue it generates every year, so you can build that into your asking price, because it's not like an oil and gas contract, which who the hell knows. It's a predictable income stream that you can value as you're transacting the property.
You say you have 13,000 leases, but
No, acres.
Acres, but that's someone's already gonna be leasing them, right?
They're leased.
They're already leased to 13,000 acres.
13,000 acres.
So, but this is all hypothetical. You're saying. So, what happens to these leases that you already have signed?
Are they contingent?
I mean, are they contingent until this thing goes in? Because
So the lease is structured with a development period and an operations period, and so the development period is the first 9 years basically of the
this
project.
you're telling us now that this is hypothetical.
Yeah.
Because you haven't started anything yet.
Right.
But you already have the leases. So what happens if this falls apart?
If this falls apart, we terminate the leases.
Okay. Well, I mean, it was just something. You never know.
Yeah.
You
No,
have
that's
that
a fair
lease.
question,
I mean,
but yeah.
can somebody else?
Yeah.
Because you canceled it.
No, we've
or-
got some financial backing, but not enough to continue to
But
pay for a project we
hypothetically,
can't
if
build.
you guys went under and you had a lease, you get a good lawyer, they'll say, well, you signed a lease for these guys, we bought them out. That's how these bankrupt stuff goes. That, you have the lease, but you haven't started anything yet. And then if something goes south with you, somebody else buys out the lease.
Buys the lease. Well, I mean, but it is specifically a wind lease.
So it's not,
So if the
this
commissioner,
project
commissioners and the
doesn't
trustees,
happen, the lease is
Void.
void? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, I mean, if it turns out that we're not allowed to develop wind anywhere in the county, or in particular places that don't allow us to put together a viable project, then yes, we would terminate the leases and discontinue payments. And it is a wind lease. So yes, theoretically, could we sell to another wind developer? Sure. But how dumb would they have to be to come in and buy a bunch of leases in a county that's already outlawed wind?
You never know. Everything's political nowadays.
This is specific to the Conservation Club. We are part of the Western Reserve Land Conservancy. How does that work? Is that something you would even look at, or do you have any kind of sway using like organizations like maybe Ducks Unlimited or Whitetails Unlimited and making donations and like that to get them to kind of maybe like, I don't know, there's talk that there's a way to get the Western Reserve Land Conservancy taken off so that you're able to utilize that property.
Yeah, there may be, but I'm not sure. Maybe our lawyer friend can help us with that, because I'm really not sure. But there are a number of different conservation easement organizations. Western Reserve.
Yes.
Western Reserve is one that, yes, we have encountered, and I think our feeling was that those are quite restrictive and not able to be gotten around. So, and they, in many cases, are they specifically call out wind development as a no-go.
Every lease by the Western Reserve Conservancy can be negotiated, it's all different.
Okay.
So you
The ones
just-
that
just
we've
because-
seen- the ones that we've seen were very
you can negotiate anything you want. We're allowed to have our shooting berms down there and maintain our trails, isn't that right? Am I right, Rob? Like we're able to maintain the trails and all that stuff.
Okay.
We can even cull trees, dead trees
Yeah.
specifically, but even like some, if they're, you know, shading out another tree, we can't commercially harvest it for lumber.
Yeah.
But we negotiated all that, and we can build a bridge across the East Branch of the Ashfield River if we want, because that's in the lease. Everything's negotiable in the lease. Right.
There are some easements, there are some types of easements that if we want to develop that property, we will buy it out of the easement.
Okay. So now, what are the different types of leases that you offer homeowners?
Different types.
Is there
of
a
leases.
good neighbor lease?
Well, it's not a lease, but yes, we don't have one here yet, but yes, there would be a good neighbor agreement.
And
part of
what is
other
that?
90
Can you explain how it works?
That's part of that other 95% of the development process that I keep talking about.
Yeah,
Is basically identifying landowners that are in proximity to where facilities will be sited.
How does that affect the setback? Do you provide good neighbor leases so that say you lease Cameron Wright's property or whoever, Spencer's down there in Leon, and you can maybe fit 3 turbines on one of the parcels, but if you get a good neighbor lease, does that allow you to increase the number of turbines you can put on that property? Because you can run it right out to the line instead of it honoring a setback. Is that how that works?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, and we will
so
pursue those in some cases to expand our optionality on the land that we have leased.
Next question. Can you can explain sort of the formula for a participating landowner lease where they're going to have turbines and this and that. How are good neighbor leases structured or worded or compensated?
So usually they vary across our different projects, and like I said, we don't have one here yet because we haven't gotten that far. But generally, they're a set payment per year.
We have an environmental lawyer here. What is that? You have developed storage projects on turbines.
We have.
How come you not?
Personally,
I mean,
but
is that
it
even
has.
part? Is that considered? Where's that in the process? Is that something you even have to bring up to somebody, or do you just say, "Hey, boom, we're going to drop a 150 acre battery right in the middle of this field"?
No, we would have to go through the exact same interconnection process, and we would have to go through the exact same permitting process.
Okay. But you could utilize the leases you have right now for that project.
Well, actually, we'd need a different LLC for that, but we're
No problem. Those are easy. That takes 10 minutes.
Okay.
Doesn't it? How long does it take to file an LLC on the Secretary of State?
I don't know. I didn't
Not long.
actually do it, but it's a matter of hours.
Hey, I'm trying to get questions out there that people haven't had the opportunity. I've been through a couple of these meetings, and I've had them approach our property, endorse it, so I kind of know a little bit. These people need to know what they're signing. How can they be for or against anything if they don't know what they're signing?
I guess they could read.
Yes, they could.
The fact that you brought 2 owners' names up, I'm pretty sure one I know wouldn't appreciate it either.
It's county record, it's public record, it's on the website.
They're recorded leases.
They're recorded leases, I can pull them off, I can pull them up right now on my phone. Well, I'm just saying.
Yeah, there's not supposed to be any secret.
There's no secret, I mean, it's public record. What is that? I mean, everybody knows who's leased, it's easy to look.
I can assure you that he read his lease because it took me 9 months with his attorney to negotiate it.
I'm sure he did. I'm talking not everybody's that savvy.
2 questions for you and one for the commissioners.
Sure.
This proposed map goes to the PA line. Does your project go into PA?
No.
Number 2.
It doesn't go into Trumbull County either. So the bottom line is the county line,
right,
and the eastern line is the state line.
Okay.
And that's just because these projects are hard enough to permit in only one jurisdiction.
I'm gonna put you on the spot. We know you're pro turbine, what's the biggest drawback of a turbine?
Biggest drawback, the grid.
Getting the power to the grid?
It's maintaining a grid that hasn't served us very well. And everything we do is substantiating that structure. We're feeding into it.
But that's not the turbine specifically.
It's not the turbine specifically, but it is the project, right? The project's purpose is to connect to the grid.
Okay, well, what's the worst thing about the turbine itself?
About the turbine?
Yeah, there's gotta be something
I
that
think
could
he's
be
asking,
tweaked.
in your opinion, what would be the worst part about having one in your backyard?
Yeah, same question.
Noise?
I mean, yeah, 10, 15 years ago, maybe noise.
How about now?
Less so now, dramatically less so now. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure how I would answer that. I mean, other than
Well, it's not always sure they're allowed.
the disruption of building it, maybe. So, you know, it's a construction project, and construction projects are big and loud and disruptive.
Are you going to be putting money towards improving the roads here to be able to handle the capacity of the weight of turbines?
Yep, that's something we would have to. But that's, you know, again, that 95% of the development process, we can't, you know, people have asked me about roads ever since I started doing these meetings. And given that I can't tell you where turbines are going, it doesn't make a lot of sense to get it into the nitty-gritty of what roads are able to accommodate the kind of weight that we want to put on them when we don't know what roads we're even talking about because we don't know where we're putting anything.
So why Ashtabula County?
What's that?
Just assume they're all bad.
They are. But why Ashtabula County? Why have you come here? Why have you chosen
Farmland.
us? Yeah, farmland, exactly.
Because we believe that wind is compatible with farming. You know, it's the footprint that a wind project creates relative to even a solar project. I mean, a solar project is a wholesale, you know, replacement of the land usage. Wind power is, you know, a partial replacement of a small portion of the land being used. So, and we've found that our landowners are interested in making that compromise. You know, can I spare 3 acres to get the income stream that's going to come from those 3 acres? And does it outweigh what I could make by planting crop on those 3 acres? Yeah? Yes?
This one's for the commissioners. You mentioned that you have gotten a response from some townships. I wondered if we could hear which townships and what they have said, and if you don't.
Our clerk has them on file. I don't have that list with
And
me
so
here
how
today.
would we access that?
They're all subject to public record, so if you want to email our clerk, you can get them. Not a problem.
Clerk of courts?
No, it'd be the clerk of the Board of Commissioners. Lisa Hawkins is the clerk's name. JP, I think, may have a card here.
Yeah, I've got one of my cards. I can give it to you. You can send me an email and I'll forward it to the clerk and then she can.
So you don't know any off the top of your head, or you just prefer not to share it?
I don't want to misspeak. I mean, I would get the list from the board.
I think we have 4 or 5.
There could have been a couple more that came in, so.
How long has it been since you first entered the county to solicit leases?
We first started having conversations in April of last year, and we started signing leases in June of last year. Or we started trying to sign leases in June of last year, probably started signing them around August. I don't know, I'd have to go back and look as
How long did
to
it
when we
take?
had our first success. Yeah.
You keep referencing your project in Maine. How
Yeah.
long did it take from the beginning of doing that until your project is complete?
Yeah, well, so I joined that project in 2019 and it came online in 2025. But the project was planted in 2013. So it took 12 years. Yes?
As far as the base that holds these things down, how deep and how big they are. And the reason I ask this is because my water table, I drop something down there, about 12 foot down. But if you start building these out, how's that gonna affect our water table? A lot of people spend a lot of money to drill wells. If you know, mess some wells up, that's a pretty bad thing, so that's my question.
Yeah, no, and we map where the wells are actually located so that that doesn't happen. And when we install a turbine foundation, I mean, we excavate the hole and then we pump out the water in it, and then the water is allowed to restore, you know, around the turbine foundation once it's in the ground. But the turbine foundation, I think, it depends on the soil type. They can go down anywhere from like 15 to 20 feet, 25 feet maybe, something like that.
Yeah, like I said, my water's about 4 foot down. That kind of concerns me because you're going through streams, everything else. Not only that, you start drilling transmission lines. How deep are they going? Where do you want to cross? What kind of, you know, I know that just doing full service operations, that, you know, you got wetlands, you're going to be so far back. And, you know, I guess the
I mean, for the most part, we have to be out of wetlands entirely. Or we have to pay pretty dearly to create impacts to wetlands.
So you'll make sure that, you know, the lines run through wetlands and all that.
I mean, are we able to avoid wetlands entirely? Often no, but we avoid them as much as we can because we have to pay mitigation fees to impact the wetlands. So we make every effort to go around them, but that's not always possible.
And then if you dig down deep enough that messes my well, it doesn't really matter as long as it's not a wetland. That's what I want.
Well, no, like I said, we would identify where wells are such that we would not damage them in the digging of a turbine foundation. Yes.
Can you write a lease on residential property?
Yeah.
If I have a 55-acre farm, which is classified as residential, I don't know why.
Oh, you mean in terms of zoning? I thought you just meant a parcel with a house on it. You mean, okay. Yeah. Yes, in both cases, yes. I mean, a parcel with a house on it, especially with only 55 acres, there's an outside chance that there might be a corner of that we could put a turbine on, but we would be interested in leasing it just because we could use it for connectivity between other parcels. So that's, you know, so we tend not to be all that picky about the land that we lease because we're trying to create a bigger connectivity picture.
This is a great follow-up to that. Because you're not particular on what land you lease, have you been looking at?
Initially, we're not initially picky. So like I said, that first charge in the first year is all about acreage because we needed to get to 9,000 acres. So any acreage inside of that shaded area, we were all for it. But now we're being a little bit more discerning and saying, okay, how do we find the acreage that will help us create the connectivity that a project needs? So we went from kind of a, let's get as many acres as we can as quickly as we can, to now we need to cite a project that actually makes some sense. And that's a longer, more tedious process.
So in Ohio, we have a lot of brownfields, we have a lot of Superfund sites, and I'm wondering if you have looked into those sites at all, or the impact of wind turbines with, you know, stirring up the dust or whatever.
Stirring up the, you don't mean,
It's already leaching into the ground.
Are you looking into?
Yeah, we have so actually there's a site in Ashtabula County that I think like 15 years ago Apex explored doing a project on, and in fact I think it actually got to the permitting stage. It was before SB 52, and I want to say that was like a 72 megawatt, probably, I don't know. It was a smaller scale project than what we're proposing now, but it was along the lake shore, and I think there was a lot of opposition to it being along the lake shore, even though it was on a brownfield site. But that's, you know, I wasn't there at the time. That's kind of me extrapolating a little bit, so I don't know the full history of that project. Yes, sir.
I am probably gonna rustle some keys, so I won't use names. But you mentioned you had to hit the threshold of 9,000 acres to be able to, in the initial phase, right? Is that, now, this outline here, is that, this is just a concept, I understand, but something that's bothered me is, I'll use a name that it was and not that it is, the Hawkins Farm at the corner of Hickok, Mill Creek Road in Eagleville, just west of Jefferson. it'll cast a shadow on Jefferson if they put a turbine there. And another parcel to the west of that, on 307 at the end of Dadyville Road, it's a much larger parcel. Where they're way outside the scope of the lines here. Okay, was that just help me understand why it's leased? Because I am not getting.
Why do we have leased parcels outside of that?
Did you lease it just so
area?
you could hit that threshold?
No, in some cases we leased land from landowners who had large amounts of land inside of the boundary.
Well,
and they wanted to lease it all.
Okay, so they
And
can so how does that work? I mean, okay, so you lease it, but do you pay on all the acreage because everybody thinks they're gonna get rich on this, or do you just pay on
per acre? Yeah.
On the initial lease, right? Or is it for the life of the lease?
For the life of the lease, we pay on the basis of acreage.
Okay.
It's a smaller amount during the development phase. It's a larger amount during the operations phase, and then in the operations phase, we add a per megawatt payment as well.
So I think it was Liam at the Lennox meeting. He threw out it's $20 an acre for everything. It's a $40 an acre during the first year or
Signing
whatever.
bonus. Whatever.
Signing bonus. So that I was just trying to understand that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's roughly it.
All right.
And so that's why larger landowners want to lease all their land, because they're getting a signing bonus and a first year rent payment based on their acreage. They want to get as big a multiplier on that as they can.
But what's the why would you lease outside the boundary? I don't understand that.
Because they can leverage their land. So in order for us to get access to their land inside of the boundary, they can get us to lease the land outside of the boundary.
We're talking about it.
And actually, we've told them straight out, we don't intend to develop it. We're going to terminate it at some point, but
Okay.
they want to lease it.
So it doesn't make any sense. I was trying to make sense of something that obviously doesn't make any sense. That's fair.
Any question for us?
Doesn't make sense to you, it makes sense to the landowner.
No, I get it, but I mean, for you, I don't understand. But did they leverage that against you? Is that what you're saying?
They said
Oh,
they said all or nothing.
All right, got it.
You want to lease with us, you lease it all or you
Okay.
lease nothing.
That makes more sense.
Thanks.
This kind of goes along with that for the commissioners. So this proposed project map is what it is. It's from Apex. Do you have any plans on trying to get some legislation for the rest of the county for other parcels in case somebody else wants to come in and this extra piece of property? Say they want to start there and go west or go north or go south.
No, we're actually seeking input from all 27 townships, which is above and beyond the scope of Apex.
Right, so you're gonna go
Concept
for the whole, for
all the unincorporated areas of the county, yes.
So when we actually develop a map, and then if we pass a map, then it would show the entire county and probably color coordinated in some fashion that shows these are the areas where it's permissible, these are the areas where it would not be permissible.
Right, and it'll include this, this will be included.
It won't have anything to do with this.
It's gonna be above and beyond this.
Because this is just for their project. Our map will be for the entire county. That are unincorporated, because it's not just for this project. It could be for a future wind project, it could be for a solar project. It could be 20 years from now from a developer that doesn't even, from a company that doesn't even exist.
So you're gonna make this general?
For large scale wind.
For an economically significant large scale, that's the only ability we have to regulate in the Ohio
Which would be
Revised Code.
wind, nuclear?
No, just wind and solar. Economically significant, so 50 megawatts and greater for wind, 50 megawatts or greater for solar. It's the only ability we have to regulate. Now, I want to preface by saying that below that, subject to local zoning. So you got to talk to your townships about your local zoning, because if it's not a large scale project, but if a farmer wants to put up a windmill, he might be able to do so.
Right.
Under local
Or
zoning.
even a wind turbine.
So this is only for the larger scale projects, is where the special statute exists.
But you're working on it. That's what I wanted to know. You're
For the
talking about
unincorporated
that
areas.
for the future.
Yeah, for the whole unincorporated area of the county, correct.
For this year, next year, 5 years from now? Do you have a target date?
Well, no, the map would stand unless altered, so.
Okay. As soon as you pass it.
Who's your competition to produce energy?
To produce energy or like, other renewable companies?
But produce energy. What if the nuclear plant said, we're gonna fire up another reactor, put you guys out of business? Maybe?
Yeah, well, not really, because they couldn't do it fast enough to get to the grid quicker than we can. Even if it did take us 12 years.
It's also under the assumption too that you'd only need the energy from Apex or from the nuclear company. I think the demand for energy is going to continue to increase just inherently.
And I feel we're ripe for this type of stuff because we're within a day's drive of 60% of the country's population. So you have to be cognizant of that. Most people live in this part of the country. Ohio also is pretty conducive for doing business. CNBC just ranked Ohio the #1 state to do business in all the 50 states. So just think, if not this project, it's going to be something else. So that's why we always have to be cognizant and always be part of the conversation, always be clued into what's going on, because this is the only conversation we're going to be having about potential development in the future. I'm sure there's more on the horizon.
Good question here. Decommissioning, does that include the concrete base? You dig that out?
We dig it out partially, so we go down usually 5 feet. I think Ohio requires us to go down 5 feet. And if the farmer absolutely insists on taking it all out, we will. But usually they find that the machinery and the impact that we create to dig the whole thing out creates more compaction than it would have otherwise. And so they prefer to just keep it below plow depth than cover it over.
And you cover the cost of cover.
Oh, yeah.
So I was looking at our zoning map that we have in Sheffield Township. Actually, I was looking for the map and I found the different designations of there's residential and agricultural and industrial and commercial. This is an industry, right? This is a producing electricity industry or commercial. So if a township says, okay, yeah, we want you guys to come in, do they need to then redo all their zoning so that everybody can be commercial, all the ag fields can be industrial? Like, how does our already in place zoning restrictions affect, or does it just say, okay, the wind turbine industry is coming in, all of our zoning gets thrown out the window, even if you're residential?
Well, I think as I've understood it, your zoning applies up to that 50 megawatt threshold. And then after 50 megawatts, or what did you say, economically substantial?
Economically significant, large scale. It actually, this project actually supersedes local zoning.
And comes under the purview of the OPSB.
And we've invited our zoning board out here with a few members tonight to take all of this in. They're currently in the process of well, you guys have been to some of the meetings. How do you want to explain it? Updating some zoning, so this is great knowledge for them to have moving forward. As you just said, the zoning below that 50 threshold would kind of be up to them.
I'm Jim Moyer. Yes, I live in this township. I'm on zoning. I'm the secretary, and we have 14 articles for our township. Right now, we have updated, and we've had hearings, public hearings through 12, I believe. 12? 18, yeah. And we're working on Article 13 now, and 14 shortly. We hope to be done by the end of the year. We will have a formal meeting again to show everybody what we've done. We're not out to get anyone. I live in this area too. All of us on this Township Zoning Commission live here. So we're going to try to make this as right as possible. And we're going to try to take everybody's information into account. Residential, commercial, industrial, and so on, just like you pointed out. Okay?
And just out of curiosity, who lives in Sheffield?
Cool. I was going to do that later. Thank you.
I was scared.
So I have a question and then a statement for everybody. So, is this like a one and done thing? Like if we say no to Apex and another wind farm company comes in 5 years from now, Does that apply to them too, or do we have to go through this?
You're not saying no to Apex, you'd be saying no to
Well-
development generally.
Okay.
We just happen to be here.
And then my statement, some of you might know about this already, but Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, there's gonna be a landowners and neighbors meeting. It's gonna be at 2325 State Route 46 in Jefferson. And we'd like to see you there to hear what you gotta say. And hopefully it's much bigger than this, but just wanted to let everybody know.
Yes.
I have a question for the commissioner. So the only way we can oppose this is to go to our trustees and tell them how we feel, and they take it to you guys?
Yeah, so that would be the best bet. I'd encourage you to talk to your trustees, and let them know how you feel about it. And then from that point, once the trustees pass a resolution, that'll come to us. Then we're the next step in the process. And you can also provide input at that step as well.
And that was one of the main reasons for this meeting tonight, was to get a feel of our township residents on, whether they want restrictions, partial restrictions, no restrictions. We want to hear from our people of what they want.
Is there any way we can get it on the ballot or no? Does this kind of, is there a way of putting it on the ballot?
The referendum. So if all of this is approved, right, we can collect signatures for a referendum, which is a vote from the public, yay or nay.
On the map that's adopted, as I understand it. It's a yea or nay on the map that's adopted, as I understand.
Okay.
Yes, first I'd like to thank you for coming tonight. I would have liked more information than this. I would have liked more written, so I can go home and read it on the process of the whole thing. This doesn't do me much good, really. I can tell you where I live, but it doesn't,
Yeah, we got a lot bigger packet. Would you have like 5 or 6 pages on the one that you passed out at Lanks?
Yeah, we used a packet that we kind of walked through, but I chose to just kind of address some questions this time.
Well, and I do appreciate clean energy. I would encourage the commissioners to investigate the hydro, what'd you call it?
Electricity.
Hydroelectricity. Investigate that. That sounds great.
How are you gonna dam up the river and
Well, I don't know.
everything would be flooded for hydroelectricity?
I don't know.
dams on the
Investigate.
river.
We're losing conservation.
Check it out.
That's because they're low head.
And
You gotta have some gravity to turn a turbine.
absolutely, yeah.
Mr. Grin isn't gonna cut it.
Right, but I am actually thinking not only our rivers, but we have Lake Erie that has waves constantly. And so we could be having turbines in Lake Erie. There are just things that we need to explore. And this is, the reason why I'm at this meeting is because we are talking about renewable energy as an idea, and I'm proud of us for doing that. And I'm grateful that I was, told to come on down here from Conneaut. Thank you.
Any more questions? Concerns?
Yes.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Our trustees, how do you feel about the way we feel tonight?
Casey's like,
Out of the residents, if we could see either, I don't know if you want to tell everybody how you feel, let us know when you leave, hey, here's my name, here's what I, and then, then we can look at everybody, all the residents, and, we can put a favor, not in favor, on, beside your name on the sign-in sheet, and that gives us a good feel for how everybody in our township that is here feels about the solar and wind energy, what restrictions we should have. So, if the residents want to stay and, catch us as they go out, that would be great. We can, put a little note and then we have.
What's the population of Sheffield?
1,600.
1,600.
So it's a very small percentage.
Will there be other meetings? So many people didn't know about this.
Well, we advertised it a couple weeks in the Gazette, and it was also on Facebook. Yes,
You have a Facebook page?
it was on the Sheffield
Township.
neighborhood page. And we do have a website also.
Yes, that's where I saw it.
Okay.
And I know it's getting late, but for the commissioners, to the best of your knowledge, there is no plan from First Energy or to build another big power plant.
I'm not aware of one, but I will tell you, as part of a conversation, just to make us aware of things that are on the horizon. I don't know if you've been following the Trump administration, but they are actually looking at making modifications to the nuclear rules.
Yes.
So just so you know, that's a precursor to more nuclear likely coming in the next couple of years. So just be cognizant of that. There's discussion of other types of energy production out there. Nuclear is the one that I've been hearing a lot about lately. So, and I think that's also important. This is why I struggle with this a little bit, because I'm a big believer in personal property rights. And partly why I even struggle regulating this, because I believe you should be empowered to do what you want with your own land. And I think a lot of times, do you want the government to tell you what you can and cannot do with your own property? I'm sure you're not a fan of that, right? So just remember, if we go down this path, this is what the government is doing, telling you what you can and cannot do with your own property. So just want to be mindful of that. It's a slippery slope, because what's next? So that's where I struggle a little bit, because you pay taxes on that land. You live in a rural area. You enjoy the fact that you can do a lot of things with your own land, right? You don't like an HOA. That's why you live here. So just remember that. Because when it's not this issue, there's going to be another issue down the road. And you want the government telling you what you can do on your own property again. So just remember that. Just be cognizant of that. I'm not saying I'm for or against windmills. I live on a half-acre lot in Jefferson. There's no windmill going up on my property.
I'm putting one on mine. You're gonna be in shadow.
but just remember, we're already having this conversation. Can I finish? Can I finish?
No, because you're running this, and the problem is, yes, I have a right to do what I want in my lease, but these are so huge, they are affecting the neighbors.
Okay, so I've respected you in your speaking. I would ask that you please respect me when I'm speaking, please. So I just think you want to be mindful of that. And so please provide your opinion. That's why we're here today. There's been one commissioner in every one of these meetings, informational meetings, because we are happy to answer questions. Lifetime resident of Asheville County, lived here my entire life. Been through a lot of discussions, was part of the 2010 discussion on the oil and gas development. So I welcome this, thank you for being here, but I just felt that was an important point also to mention here as well this evening. But I'm sorry, I cut the trustees off, so. Okay.
How would this, how are we giving up power to the government by saying no windmills? You told me that if we vote this, against this, or for it, you said that you would limit my rights to my property. How?
So if the commissioners pass this map, it'll ultimately say what you can and cannot do as it relates to wind or solar development on your own property from a large-scale perspective.
So I can't make 40,000 megawatts. Gotcha.
So you can't put one of those windmills on your property for a project like this.
No, I can,
so,
if my local zoning allows it.
For a project like this, is what I just said, for a project like this.
For 40,000?
So if it could be as small as 50 megawatts.
50, okay.
So let's say, for example, if the county wanted to jump in and start generating its own power to support the county, if there was ever a way to do that in the future. I mean, just think of different ideas that could exist. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not telling you.
So it would, okay, so it would limit my ability to produce over 49,000 megawatts.
It would limit your property from having this on there if you signed a lease from a private developer for your private property.
For over 50,000, for 50,000 and over.
You're part of a 50 megawatt or greater
so
project.
So a project smaller than that would not affect this.
You'd have to talk to your local zoning.
Yeah.
But this would be just for the 50
your map
megawatt.
wouldn't affect
Yeah, for the 50 megawatt or greater.
Okay, so if I'm against 50, if I'm below 50, then I don't, your map ain't gonna limit my rights.
Not our map.
Correct.
Yep.
I'm waiting to be called on.
Go ahead.
All right, so I respect the fact that you honor the landowner and the property owner's rights 100%. This project, does it affect neighboring properties? There's something called shadow flicker, which I noticed you didn't even touch on here. Can you explain that? And is it per turbine?
Things I touched on were largely driven by questions.
Okay,
So
okay.
Nobody asked a question.
I know, but you brought it up at the other meeting. So
Want me to talk about shadow flicker?
I would like that. Is it when you talk about you talk about limiting or attempting to limit to what 30 minutes a day or 30 hours a year, whatever you said.
30 hours a year.
Okay, so is that per turbine?
It's per house.
Per dwelling.
Yeah.
Okay, how successful are you at keeping it at 30?
Well, we have to be. Like 30 is the standard.
Okay.
So if we don't demonstrate that we've kept it below 30 hours per year, project doesn't get permitted. And if it's demonstrated after the project is built that it exceeds 30, then we have to either curtail that turbine during the middle of the day so that it doesn't spin, it doesn't create shadow, or figure out some other way of mitigating. What's that? So shadow flicker is basically when the angle of the sun strikes the turbine and then strikes your house. So the turbine's spinning, and it happens for, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes a day when the sun is at that perfect angle such that the shadow strikes your house.
I have one last question. Since in the lease it states that you can develop this in one or more phases, and just say that the turbines you guys decide to put on or choose are under 5 megawatts,
Okay.
are you going to consider each turbine a phase? And that way you don't have to go by SB 52, like phase 1 through however many landowners you have?
I'm not sure I entirely follow the question, but I mean, a phase would basically be like a portion of the project that's built during one construction mobilization, right? So, yes, hypothetically, we could remobilize an entire construction operation 45 times, but to mobilize a construction operation for a wind turbine is not.
I'm not saying mobilize, I'm saying on paper, in writing, a phase. Being one turbine that's less than 5 megawatts. So therefore you bypass the 50 megawatts or more.
But then local zoning would come into play.
Right.
I have a feeling.
With a total, so with 5 megawatt turbine, with a total of less
No, I'm
than.
not saying with a total. Since you have in your lease, it can be in one or more phases. Are you going to consider each landowner a phase as an individual megawatt?
No. I'm sure the power side board would have something to say about that too, most likely.
Yeah. Well, and I think phasing also has to do with your interconnection process as well. So, I mean, there are cases where we phase projects, but it's like, the northern half of it is phase 1 and the southern half of it is phase 2 or something like that. We don't piecemeal it out like one turbine at a time.
I appreciate your questions about loopholes, but I feel like the fossil fuel industry is notorious for loopholes, and so it's good to be talking to the renewable energy industry.
I'm not going anywhere, I live here.
Great.
Robert, what is the process for creating easements for transmission lines? Are you familiar with that one?
It's roughly the same as leasing. So in fact, to site our transmission line, we would seek initially to lease that land.
For public property and easement through it.
Yeah, and then in a lot of cases, we'll lease the whole property, we'll pay for the whole property, but then we'll identify a specific corridor through it. But part of why I like to do it with the lease is because then we have the land rights to put the corridor in more places. So we have a form of agreement. We don't have it for this project yet because again, we haven't gotten there. But we do have a form of agreement that establishes like a 100-foot corridor, and we will map it right into the agreement such that it goes through this section. But it only makes sense to do that if you know enough about where your turbine locations are to know where that transmission line is going to run and what path it's going to take. Otherwise, you have an easement corridor that then you can't build.
I asked that just because you were saying you don't envision turbines here in Sheffield Township, but you could envision transmission lines running through.
It's possible, yeah. If our point of interconnection was like all the way over to the west in there, then yes, there's a chance that a section could run through a corner of Sheffield. That's why Sheffield is included in that AOI at all.
Are you aware of any solar interest in our township?
Well, we don't have any. But I know that there are solar leases here, there, and everywhere. And I think, isn't Ohio, you guys might know this better than I, isn't Ohio still pending enabling legislation for community solar?
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of speculative leasing going on of, 3, 5, 10, 25 acres for solar. But those projects aren't really going anywhere because the enabling legislation in Ohio doesn't exist yet.
There's not your ear to the ground on that.
Yeah, we're not. Well, actually, no. We did have one. We have a distributed energy resources division that does community solar projects, and we did have one in Ohio. Maybe more than one actually. I'm not familiar with their whole portfolio. But, yeah.
So I feel I know the answer to this question, but I'd rather ask and make sure that I'm correct and hear that from you. I have had some people believe that as a part of this project, there's already clearing being done of property for development.
Yeah, that's not a fact.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sure there's clearing going on everywhere, but it has nothing to do with us.
Yeah. I didn't think, because why would you clear an area when you don't know where you're gonna build yet?
Right, and
if
when
you
we
know that
don't,
there'll
and
be a
when for the
project.
most part we don't have the land rights to do it anyway. So yeah, no, absolutely, no, we're not clearing anywhere. Yeah.
So if our property is within the area where you want these transmission lines to go across,
Yeah,
can we say no?
absolutely. Yeah, that's the difference between us and the utility. We don't have the right to just come in and declare eminent domain and say, yep, the corridor's going here because it's for the greater good of the community. We don't get to do that. We can only put things where we have land agreements with the landowner. Yeah.
Can you utilize state waterways that they have, their designated waterways or any other? Can you maybe pick up a easement from the county and talk to them, or a state easement along an interstate?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, Casey could probably answer that, because he's pushing the gas line to come up our 11.
Yeah, but that's a little different, isn't it?
Same thing, you're still gonna be putting an underground line in.
I mean, are there cases where we have gotten land rights from a government entity? Yes, there are. And it's usually for, my project in Maine, again, I'll use that example. We discovered down the line, because the surveying in that area of eastern Maine was so horrific for so long, we discovered after we had already cited our project that we had an access road that was running along a Bureau of Land Management section of parcel. And so we did a lease with the Bureau of Land Management so that we could keep our road where it was and not have to go back to the permitting authorities and re-permit it. So we just write a check every year to the Bureau of Land Management.
On your map, what are the odds of those lines migrating? I don't know if you've had experience in the past. You have an initial idea where you want things.
Well,
to be,
they're gonna.
they change.
We call it's a crude term, but we call it shrink wrapping. So they're gonna migrate inward. Like that's gonna happen. It's absolutely gonna happen. So I wouldn't anticipate, just because of the things I described at the beginning that we're setting back from in the design of that polygon, we're not gonna be expanding it outward. But as the development process proceeds, I mean, there's about 300,000 acres there, and we only need about 30. So the project, once it becomes better defined, if it has that opportunity, will be much smaller in its overall leased footprint, and even smaller than that in its actual footprint. If that answers your question.
Any other questions or concerns this evening?
I appreciate everybody's questions, I really do, and yeah, thank you for having me in your townships, and I've enjoyed the conversation, so.
And I apologize, we came out of the gate pretty hot. I know most of you, some I don't. I'm a trustee here, Kirk White. This is Tim Richmond, Al Lakota, another of our trustees. And like the commissioners have said, they're kind of, I don't want to say kicking the ball to us.
No, we're empowering.
You're empowering. For us to get feedback from residents here, create a resolution in support, against, etc. My wife is an elementary school teacher, so I've always been a big fan of raising the hand. He'd asked earlier, who again is a resident here within the township? Okay. Can I just, who is in support, of those who just raised your hand, who is in support of allowing wind or solar energies of this fashion within our township?
Does representative of the Conservation Club count? Because I'm a representative, I'm on the board.
Are you a resident of the
I'm
township?
not a resident, but we have property, so, but I am, so the board owns the property.
If you'd like to raise your hand,
I'll raise my hand.
who,
That was in support.
Oh, I just rescind my hand. Let's take it off, Keith.
He's got it on camera.
another quick show of hands, who is pretty much against all of this within the township? That is a resident here, again. Okay. A little more. Who would be in favor of a resolution in support with some restrictions, various areas within the township?
With restrictions.
With very, okay. All right, thank you very much for
Give
that.
them an inch, they'll take a mile. So I'll get them in the door.
If there is anything else, I would like to thank you guys for coming out this evening. This is very helpful.
And I'm happy to stick around if anybody wants to chat a bit more, and I have business cards if anybody thinks of anything later and wants to shoot me an email, that's fine too.
But with that, we'll go ahead and end. I would like to thank